Okay, so hi everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Social Impactors Podcast, a podcast where we highlight impactful people making positive social change in their communities. And today we have a guest, Firdaus, and I hope I said your first name right. And it's an absolute pleasure to be on the podcast with you. I know I said I had the chance to look through what you've done, and I mean, if there's any definition of social impact, it's what you've done throughout your life. So, Firdaus, thank you for being on the show. And if you can just give a little introduction of who you are, what you do, and why you're a social impactor.
Well, thanks very much for that very kind and generous introduction. It's a pleasure for me to be on your program. Who I am, my name is Firdaus Kharas, as you know, as you said. And what I do is I basically make media for behavior change. So media for social change. And you can define that, and there are many different formats of doing that. So what I have specialized in and what I'm best known for are animated shorts, but I also do live action videos and documentaries and other formats as well. But I think I'm most famous for the animated shorts I've done. So I started doing this in Ottawa about 24 years ago and have been doing it ever since then. And if you want to see any of my work, anybody can go to my Vimeo channel. Just put my name in Vimeo and you will find a channel with about 3,675 videos currently in 325 different language versions. So my videos are one way or the other being used, as far as I know, in 198 countries. We can track those on Vimeo, including North Korea and Iran and all kinds of other countries. We know at least 1 billion people have seen them. And we think that more than 1 billion people have seen them, but we can't quantify, we can't say for certain more than 1 billion. So what these animations are called behavior change communications. They're trying to get people to change their behavior. And usually they're on issues like children's rights, human rights, a lot of disease prevention. I worked on Ebola, polio, migraine headaches just recently, all kinds of HIV/AIDS, all kinds of disease prevention, and various kinds of other social issues. So I try to talk directly to the viewer to get them to change their mind, to change their behavior. And how you do that is you create what is called cognitive dissonance. And basically, what we're trying to do is get somebody to shift from what they are doing to something else and change their behavior. And how I do that across many cultures and many boundaries and many religions and many ethnicities is simply to appeal to the common denominators that we all have in our core. And I think those common denominators are values. So, for example, I can create a malaria prevention program using two funny Anopheles mosquitoes, appealing to the fact that no mother in their world, doesn't matter what language they speak, doesn't matter which ethnicity they are, doesn't matter what citizenship they have, no mother wants their child to get malaria and die. And therefore, you can appeal to the commonalities, the values that we all hold basic as human beings. So that's basically what I do.
And one thing that I've realized, and you do it so well, is that video can be such a good medium to transcend language, right? There might not have to be a language component, but if you're able to give a message, it's very easy to understand that message across the world and across languages, right?
Absolutely. In fact, the first program that I worked on was actually UNICEF's program. This is in the mid-1990s, called the Cartoons for Children's Rights. And we had absolutely no language in it at all. We just used music and a card at the end to make the point that children have certain rights that are enshrined in the Convention on the Rights of Children. That series actually started my thinking, and I still continue it to this day. So I actually give credit to two people at UNICEF who worked on this project, came up with the idea of this project. We played them collectively on 2,200 broadcasters around the world.
Wow.
And it became the most watched medium, the most watched animation around the world. And this is in the days when we had to send broadcast quality tapes to broadcasters. So it was absolutely amazing the impact that we had at that time, and that began my journey that continues today. So it's started in the mid 1990s. I created in Ottawa what I called a hybrid company, because nowadays you have a term for the company. It's called a social enterprise or a B corporation in the US. But in the 5 years ago, there was no such term. And so I created what I used to call a hybrid company, which is combining for-profit work with non-profit objectives of making a social impact, as you say.
Wow. And so the follow-up question then, because it's, I don't even know how to ask it fully now, but maybe just encapsulating everything you've done, through the past 1990s up until now, how are you making that positive impact in your communities? And I'll just expand, because your communities are both local and international, right? So what does that look like?
Well, what that looks like is every project in every country is different. So I can't kind of generalize the answer. I can only tell you that what I'm trying to do is get people to internalize the messages that I make, and then for them to make their own changes. I don't ever impose a change. I don't create the change in a person. They create the change themselves, or I create a catalyst, a tool which is a catalyst for discussion, and the other person they're discussing it with makes them see the light and make the change. Now, how does that work in reality? Well, I'll give an example. Right now, I'm working with UNICEF in Myanmar on infant and women's mortality. So we know that about 47,000 infants die in the first 100 days of life in Myanmar. We know that about 3,000 women die at childbirth in Myanmar. We're trying to reduce that by perhaps 50 or 60%, which is like 30,000 lives. And what I've done is I've created 15 animated shorts that they will play on national television, both on the terrestrial broadcasters and on the digital private broadcasters. I'm giving them 20,000 DVDs to put into every community health center, hospital, doctor's office, and so on, to play locally. They have bought or are buying 40,000 tablets, and they will put my animations on the tablets, and then every midwife in the country or doctor or nurse that deals during pregnancy, that deals with the women during pregnancy, will play the appropriate animation as the woman goes from being pregnant initially through the birth, through 18 months afterwards. So in a year, for example, how do we know it works? In a year, we will know if we reduce the number of deaths of infants under 100 days of life, and we will know whether or not less women are dying at childbirth. Now, there might be many factors that contribute to this, and this might be one factor, but nevertheless, it will have made a difference if the number is significantly reduced. So on HIV/AIDS, for example, some years ago, during the height of the crisis in South Africa in particular, there were about 3.2 million people who were HIV positive, and at that point, there were no drugs to keep people alive, the antiretroviral drugs. So people were dying. I mean, HIV was basically a death sentence at that time. And we had a campaign that began there and subsequently went out in 45 languages and was used in over 150 countries. And it was 3 funny animated condoms. So it went on national television in 4 South African languages and on the South African Broadcasting Corporation. And then we watched the sales of condoms go up. So we could actually track the number of condom sales going up, and then an NGO, an American-based NGO, had a formula to figure out how many lives, how many HIV infections had been prevented as a result of the condom sales going up. And the condom sales were dramatic. I mean, they more than doubled in 1 year. So again, there might be many other awareness programs or factors that contributed to that. I wouldn't say that I was the only one doing that, but it certainly did have an impact. So every project, every country, depending on what the initiative is, has an impact. Some of them you can't measure the impact. For example, right now I'm working in the Congo on trying to change the attitudes of men towards rape victims. That means after the rape has happened. I had done a program to prevent the rapes anyway on a global basis called No Excuses, but this was different. And this particular one, to try and change the attitudes of men, I thought we would be playing them to men, to get them to change the attitude. No, I was completely wrong. It's women who have been watching it. Women by their thousands have been coming to community halls and so on and playing them and watching them in churches. And then the women took them out of Congo into neighboring countries like Zambia and Tanzania. And then some women took it over to Nigeria, to the northeast part of Nigeria, where Boko Haram, this terrible organization, has raped a very large number of young girls. So the women are using it as a catalyst to get discussions going. They stand up, they talk about their own rapes or their daughters' rapes, and they talk amongst themselves. And that's how the video is just a catalyst for them. So the local people are taking the initiative. Now, I can't tell you whether I've changed a single person's attitude in the Congo. I have no idea, and we can't measure it. There's a conflict going on in the eastern, southern part of Congo. It's a dangerous place. I have no idea, but sometimes you can measure things and sometimes you can't, and just kind of put it out, and you get a lot of anecdotal evidence, but you don't actually get statistical evidence.
Yeah.
But it's absolutely fine with me. Look, if my work has influenced one person's life, that's enough for me. Absolutely.